Final Prayer by Folding End. Chapter 1. The air inside the car was still, stale, pressed in tight like the thick Georgia humidity outside. Lila Grace McConnell shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat, her fingers tracing nervous circles along the seam of her sundress. The hem stuck to her legs with sweat, and the only light came from the half-moon above, struggling to cut through the heavy trees lining the narrow back road. Zach leaned over from the driver's seat, his cologne mixing too closely with the hot air tonight. He was saying something again, soft, coaxing, but her ears had started to tune him out. "I said," he murmured, voice low and too smooth. "You're beautiful tonight. Don't be so uptight." Lila's eyes darted towards her purse where she had placed her phone earlier. Her hand inched toward it, but Zach noticed and gently took her wrist. Not hard, not yet. "I just want to hold you," he whispered. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her chest tightened, her heartbeat loud in her ears like a drum. Everything about this night had felt wrong from the start. How he'd taken the longer route, how he pulled off onto this old forest road without asking, how his smile had slowly started to fade the moment she turned him down earlier at dinner. "I told you," she finally said, voice tight. "I'm waiting. Until I'm married." Zach let go of her wrist, sat back, then laughed quietly. But it wasn't his usual laugh, the easy, charming one that made her fall for him in the first place. This one sounded bitter, like the mask slipping from his face. "Lila, you're not some kid," he said. "You're 17. It's not like we haven't fooled around before." "That's not the same." Her voice cracked. "It's not." He leaned closer again. "So what, you think God's gonna punish us if we love each other a little more tonight?" Her stomach twisted. "Don't mock him." He groaned and looked away, pounding the steering wheel lightly. "Damn it, Lila. You always do this." Uneasy silence fills the car as they continue. The forest road was narrow and forgotten, swallowed on both sides by tall Georgia pines and creeping fog that clung to the ground like long fingernails. No lights, no signs, no sound but the low hum of the car engine beneath them. Grace sat with her knees tight together, hands clutched in her lap, her modest sundress wrinkled from the heat and the tension. The night had gone sideways fast. Zach reached into his jacket and pulled out a silver flask. He hadn't even tried to hide it. He twisted the cap, took a long swig, then sighed through his nose. "Liquid courage," he muttered with a smirk. "You make a man desperate. You know that?" Lila flinched. "You said you weren't drinking tonight." He shrugged. "Plans change." The words were casual, but his voice had that edge again, low and clipped, like he was holding back frustration. Or worse. She turned her face toward the window. Nothing out there but endless trees and the faint shimmer of moonlight on branches. It felt like the world had shrunk into this car, this seat, this moment. "You do look good tonight," Zach said once more after a pause, his hand landing on her thigh. She tensed. "Stop." "I'm just saying you're beautiful." "I said stop, Zach." But his hand didn't move. If anything, it tightened slightly, fingers pressing through the thin fabric of her dress. And behind that silence, behind his crooked smile and glassy eyes, thoughts churned. Zach's mind was a storm of resentment and heat. All this time, the guys had laughed at him. "You still haven't clapped that ass yet? What's the point of dating St. Lila?" "Maybe she's saving herself for Jesus, bro." He could hear their voices echoing in his head, laughing at him, even now. He'd defended her at first, said he respected her, said it didn't matter. But the truth? He was tired of being laughed at. Tired of going home hard and frustrated night after night. Tired of hearing her quote scripture and not satisfying her man's needs. And now his pants felt tight again. It throbbed, annoyed and aching, and he was sick of being told no. That's why he brought her out here, Middle of nowhere, no one around, no friends to help her, no place to run. Zach stopped the car. She was either going to give it up, or she could walk her teasing ass all the way back home. "I said stop," Lila said again, firmer now, pulling his hand away. But Zach was done asking. He leaned over fast and rough, and suddenly his lips were on her neck, his hands pawing at her shoulder, yanking at the strap of her dress. The stitching popped. She cried out and trying to push him off, but he was stronger. His breath reeked of whiskey, his grip tight on her wrist. "Zach, stop it, stop," she pleaded, tears already coming. He fumbled lower, one hand gripping the fabric of her dress at her thigh and beginning to pull, tearing it as he went. That was it. Her body moved before her brain could catch up. She screamed, clawed at his face, then fumbled for the door handle. It gave way with a loud click and she flung herself into the night. She hit the dirt hard, tumbling onto her side. Her elbow scraped against the abrasive dirt, and her breath exploded from her lungs. The world spun. Zach cursed, clinching his marked face. Enraged, he yells at her, calling, saying he would kill her. But she was already on her feet. Already running as her terrified legs would carry her. The woods swallowed her like a mouth. She didn't know where she was going, and she didn't care. Branches tore at her arms and face, her legs pumping through leaves and underbrush. Her breath came out in ragged sobs. She didn't even feel the blood on her arms. Only the sheer cold realization. She could have been raped, and no one would have heard her scream. No one would have found her. She ran and ran until her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees, gasping, heart trying to beat its way out of her chest. The darkness was absolute. The kind that made you feel buried. She was alone. She curled her arms around her chest and whispered, "God, help me. Please help me." Somewhere behind her, a branch cracked. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. Had Zach found her? Nothing moved, but something was out there. Watching. Waiting. Chapter 2. Branches slapped Grace's arms hard like open hands. Vines clawed at her legs. Every breath burned. But Grace didn't stop, not even when her lungs screamed for a break. She just kept going, deeper and deeper into the woods, as if distance alone could erase what had just happened. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The trees grew denser, tighter. The sky overhead disappeared behind a tangle of branches, and the moonlight that had once lit the roadside barely reached her now. She stumbled into the undergrowth, her sneakers sinking into damp earth. Pine needles and dead leaves carpeted the ground in a soft, wet silence. A branch cracked far off to her left. She froze. Her ears strained for movement. Nothing. Only the thundering of her heartbeat. Her arm throbbed from the fall. Her shoulder was bare where Zach had torn her dress, and the night air kissed it with cold. She took one shaky step forward, then another. She couldn't even tell which way the road was anymore. "Calm down," she told herself. "Just breathe. God will guide you." But the forest didn't feel like a place God came to. It felt old, heavy, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Quiet like something was holding its breath. She instinctively reaches for the purse she left behind. No phone, no way to call for help. "Stupid," she whispered, voice trembling. "You left it in the car. Stupid." Her hands trembled as she looked around. Everything looked the same. Trees, brambles, fog. No trail, no path. She had no idea where she was. She began walking, slowly, carefully, brushing past hanging limbs and thorny branches. Her scraped leg throbbed with every step, but she didn't stop. She needed to keep moving, needed to get anywhere but here. Every few steps, she glanced behind her. Nothing. But still, that feeling crept in, that someone or something was following. She couldn't hear it, couldn't see it, but she felt it, eyes. She turned quickly, just trees. Then she noticed the stillness wasn't right. Weren't there supposed to be sounds in the woods at night? Insects? Frogs? But there was nothing. Dead silence. Like the woods were listening, watching. She stopped, heart stuttering. A single leaf drifted down from the canopy above, spinning as it fell. And then, in the corner of her vision, something shifted in the dark. She whipped around, gone, as if it had never been there. "Hello?" she called out, instantly regretting it. No answer. Her voice had sounded small, wrong, even to her own ears. She started to walk faster, then faster still, until she was nearly jogging again. Her breath fogged in front of her in thin puffs. It wasn't that cold, but her body had gone numb with adrenaline. A rock caught her foot. She tripped and hit the ground hard, sliding through damp pine needles. Her head rang. Her arms stung. Her dress tore more at the side. She wanted to cry, but she had ran out of tears. She rolled onto her back and stared up at the black canopy overhead. "God," she whispered, choking on the word. "Where are you?" Then she heard it. A slow, deliberate crunch of leaves. Not close, but not far either. Measured, like footsteps. Like something walking toward her, but not running, not charging, just approaching. She sat up fast, her eyes darting through the underbrush. She saw nothing, but she could hear it, could feel it. Something was out there, and it was stalking her. Chapter 3. She didn't know how long she had been walking. Time didn't feel real anymore. The woods had swallowed it. The stars above were just scattered ghosts, barely visible through the dense tent. Grace clutched her torn cardigan tighter around her chest. One shoe was loose now, half falling off with each step. Her legs stung from cuts, her feet blistered. She moved like someone in a daze, half praying, half broken. It was the silence that scared her most. Not the dark, but the stillness. Even now the forest was completely quiet. Not a single insect. No rustle of wind, no birds, no frogs. It was like the forest was holding its breath, or like someone had killed the sound itself. She came to a small creek, barely more than a trickle, glimmering faintly under the moonlight. The water reflected her pale face, streaked with dirt and fear. Her eyes looked too wide, animal-like. She didn't recognize herself anymore. Grace crouched by the water, letting it run over her scraped palms, cupping into her shaking hands a life-saving drink as it touched her lips. Tea was cold, sharp enough to jolt her back to reality with a cough as she drank. Once more, she dipped her fingers in for another drink and whispered a shaky prayer under her breath. "Please, Lord, I'm scared. Please help me find a way out of here. Please." The sound of the water almost comforted her. Almost. Then, something moved. A flicker. Across the surface of the water, just behind her reflection, a large shadow stood. She spun around. Nothing. Just the forest. But it had been there. She swore she'd seen them. A cloaked figure, just behind her. Her breathing quickened. She stepped back, foot slipping slightly on the muddy edge of the creek. Her heart was pounding again, like it was trying to warn her. She had to keep moving. She followed the stream for a while, hoping it might lead her back toward a road, or a house, or anything. But the deeper she went, the more the woods seemed to fold in around her. The trees grew thicker, taller, more warped, like they were leaning in to listen. She passed an old stump covered in moss. She had seen something in the creek's reflection. She wasn't imagining it. Something was following her. Grace crouched behind a large log, trying to calm her breathing. She pulled her legs in tight and hugged herself. The quiet stretched long and tense. Then, snap. A twig broke not far off. Her entire body froze. Another step. Closer this time. Slow. Deliberate. She didn't dare look, didn't dare move. The thing out there, it wasn't just stalking her. It was waiting. Playing. For the first time since she entered these woods, Grace didn't pray out loud. She didn't even whisper. She just curled tighter and shut her eyes. But something told her it didn't matter. Whatever was out there, it already knew exactly where she was. Chapter 4. Dawn still hadn't come. The night stretched on like it had no end, and Grace had long since lost any sense of direction. Her legs ached. Her lips were cracked. Her thoughts came in flickers now, like candlelight on the edge of going out. She kept moving, not because she knew where she was going, but because she knew what would happen if she stopped. The forest floor had changed. It was wetter here, muddier. The ground sank beneath her sneakers with every step. The trees were farther apart now, but taller, looming like watchtowers. They didn't whisper like the others had in the wind. These trees watched. And then she saw it. A trail, not a game trail or a dirt path. Number just a thin drag line through the mud, flanked by large, uneven footprints, too long, too wide. Grace froze. Boot prints, large, broad, deep. It was not Zack stalking her. Whoever or whatever had made them was heavy and moving slow, one step at a time. Deliberate. She crouched near the closest print, her breath shallow. The heel sunk deep, the mud split where weight had pressed through. Not just following, she realized. Tracking. She looked ahead. The trail disappeared into a thicker part of the woods, where the trees arched in unnatural shapes and the ground tilted downward. A cold weight settled in her chest. She didn't move, didn't blink. That's when she noticed something else. A second set of footprints. Smaller. Not new, faded and half-washed out, but human. A shoe tread. It was her own. She'd been here before. She was walking in circles. Grace stumbled back, panic rising again. Her vision blurred, chest tightening. She was not alone. She had never been alone. She turned quickly, half expecting to see someone there. But it was just the trees. Still. Something was closer now. Grace pulled herself up and moved once more. As she moved again, she found a fallen tree blocking the path. There were deep gouges in the wood, not random. Sharp, measured, repeated, a mark. A warning. Her name was carved into the log. Fear began to overwhelm her. She couldn't breathe for a moment. Something was playing with her. Then came the sound. Far behind her. Crunch. A single footstep. Slow. Intentional. She spun around but saw nothing. Then another. Closer. She ran. Her lungs flared as she tore through the brush, ducking low-hanging limbs, her feet barely touching the ground. The forest became a blur of shadows and motion. Something chased her, but not in full sprint, not a beast crashing through. No, this was different. This was calm, controlled, confident, like a hunter who knew his prey wasn't going far. Grace didn't stop until her legs gave out beneath her and she collapsed onto the damp leaves, gasping, trembling. The forest had gone silent again. She lay there in the muck, not moving, scanning the dark forest. Somewhere above her, a raven cawed. That was the first sound she'd heard in what felt like hours. It felt like a warning. And then she saw it. A shape, just beyond the trees. Tall. Still. Not moving. Watching. But when she blinked, it was gone. Only the trees remained. But her body knew what her eyes weren't ready to see. Someone was out there. And he wasn't done yet. Chapter 5. Grace's legs wobbled as she pulled herself up from the forest floor. Her whole body ached. Her muscles shook with every step. She was so cold now, her skin numb, scraped, and caked in dried blood and dirt. Still, she kept walking. Because stopping meant giving in. And she wasn't ready to die. Not yet. The trees thinned slightly near a slope. Her breath caught when she saw something ahead. Not animal, not human. Wood. At first it looked like just more fallen branches, but as she stepped closer, the shape took form. A shack. Old. Tilted slightly sideways. half-rotted boards. The roof was caved in on one side, and moss grew like a disease up the outer walls. It had no light, no sound, just that feeling of something forgotten. But it was shelter, and right now, that was enough. Grace staggered toward it, stepping over a rusted metal bucket and pushing open the warped door. It creaked on rusted hinges, the sound slicing through the silence like a scream. Inside, the air was thick, damp. It smelled like rot and dust and something sour. The floor was covered in dirt and leaves. A splintered cot sat in the corner. The walls were streaked with old water stains. And something else, scratches, dozens of them, across the inner walls, long, jagged, frantic, like someone had tried to claw their way out. She backed toward the doorway, heart pounding again. Her eyes darted to the cot. A dark stain soaked one corner of the mattress. Not fresh, not ancient either. No, she thought. No, not here. But she couldn't go back outside. Not yet. She slid the door closed behind her. It didn't fully shut, but she wedged an old chair against it and collapsed onto the floor, body trembling. She sat in the corner and pulled her knees to her chest. She looks up, noticing a reflection on the mantel. A dusty portrait. A father, daughter and mother smiling. They seemed happy. Tears spilled freely now, silent, heavy. She didn't bother wiping them away. She whispered a prayer into her knees. Not for escape, not even for help, just to not be forgotten. And then just beyond the wall, thud. She stopped breathing. Another thud, slow, deliberate, right outside the shack. Something was outside, circling. Then, silence. She held her breath. The wall beside her creaked, ever so slightly, as weight pressed against it. And then, scratch. 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 Right along the boards. The sound of something dragging metal slowly across the wood. Not pounding, not breaking in, just letting her know it was there. She put a hand over her mouth, muffling the sob that escaped her throat. Another scratch. Higher this time, like it was dragging across the wall as it stood taller. Her mind screamed, "Don't move, don't breathe, don't yell." Whatever it was waiting for something. After what felt like forever, the scratching stopped. And then, the soft crunch of footsteps moving away. But she didn't believe it. She didn't move. She sat there in the dark corner of the shack, too afraid to even blink, wondering if the next sound she heard would be the door breaking open. But none came. And for the first time that night, she feared God might not be listening anymore. Chapter 6. The light was different when Grace opened her eyes. Grey, faint, soft enough to be mistaken for a dream, if not for the pain in her back and the cold in her bones. She was still in the shack, still alone, still alive. The sound of birds chirping had returned, faint and scattered like they were testing the silence. It was morning, or close enough. A weak mist hovered just outside the doorway, and the forest beyond looked just as grim as it had in the dark. She sat up slowly, her joints stiff, back screaming from the hard floor. Her mouth tasted like dirt and fear. She hadn't slept. Not really. Just drifted. The scratches on the inside of the shack were clearer now in the light. So were the ones on the inside of the door. Her stomach twisted. Someone had tried to stay safe here. It hadn't worked. She stood shakily and eased the crate away from the door. It groaned louder than she wanted. She paused, listening. Nothing. She pushed the door open. The forest was still again. But this was a different kind of stillness. Not the kind that hides danger. The kind that follows after it's already passed through. She stepped outside and blinked against the soft, hazy light filtering through the trees. Her breath misted faintly in the air. It was colder than last night, unnaturally so for Georgia. Something wasn't right. And then she smelled it. Copper. Wet. Raw. No, it was blood. She followed the scent, stepping slowly over roots and branches. Birds chirped in the distance, but none were near her. Even the squirrels had vanished. Then she saw it. She froze. Her hand clutched her chest as her knees nearly buckled. Zach. What was left of him? He lay twisted on the ground, eyes wide open and empty, mouth slack in a scream that never made it out. His torso was a ruin, torn open from neck to navel, chest cracked wide like a rotten pumpkin, guts spilling into the moss. One leg bent unnaturally, his arms flung out like a broken doll. Blood was everywhere, spattered across the brush, smeared along a nearby tree trunk, even painted across the forest floor in what looked like a handprint. Too large to be his, too deliberate to be random. Grace backed away, her body shaking. He had come looking for her. She knew it. After she jumped from the car, maybe he sobered up just enough to feel guilty. Maybe he drove back. Maybe he shouted her name once, just once. And then he found something else, or it found him. And now he was here. Dead, destroyed. Her legs gave out and she collapsed to the ground, retching into the dirt. Tears flooded her eyes. She shook so hard she could barely breathe. She had hated him for what he'd done. But no one deserved this. And then she heard it. A whisper of movement in the trees behind her. Not loud, not urgent, just a single step. Like whoever, whatever, had done this was still watching. Waiting for her to see it. To feel it. This wasn't a random attack, it was a message. You're next. Chapter 6. She stayed on her knees for a long time, kneeling in the blood-soaked moss, her hands trembling inches from Zach's body. His mouth was still open, his eyes glassed over, forever locked in that moment of terror. His limbs bent wrong, his ribs split open. She hadn't touched him. She couldn't. Her breath came out in short gasps, her throat raw, chest heaving. But no scream came. She had no voice left to scream. She whispered a prayer, not for him, not for herself. Just a prayer. A final one. The forest was silent again. But she wasn't alone. She knew it before she heard the footsteps. A soft crunch of leaves. But Grace didn't turn. Her eyes welled with tears as her body froze. Then the smell hit her, like rotted copper and smoke. Old blood and sweat soaked into fabric never washed. It filled her nose and made her stomach twist. Still, she didn't move. A single deliberate step behind her. Then another. Closer. She didn't turn. Her hands folded. Her eyes shut. She bowed her head. The sound grew closer. Measured. Heavy. Steady. Another crunch. The Blackwood Slasher loomed behind her, massive and still, casting a long shadow across the earth. Grace whispered, barely loud enough for the trees to hear. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. I will fear no evil. Another step behind her, closer. For thou art with me. She kept her head bowed. She never looked back. She didn't beg. Didn't scream. She prayed, even as the sound of metal rose in the air, even as the axe creaked in its swing, even as the forest exhaled for the final time. Epilogue. The main road was quiet. Zach's car sat alone on the shoulder, fog creeping over the windshield, the engine long dead. The driver's door hung slightly open, swaying in the breeze. Inside, on the passenger seat, Grace's phone buzzed once. Then again, the screen lit up softly in the shadows. Incoming call, Mum. It rang 4 times, then stopped.